Hey everybody, I just want to do a little preamble to this video here. I've had a lot of people contacting me since I went to the longer 15-20 minute format for my daily shows where I do multiple topics, saying, hey, your center topic or your middle topic or your gun talk topic is something I would like to watch, but I didn't watch it because I didn't want to sit through the whole 15-20 minute video and I didn't even know it was there in the middle. So could you start pulling those out, making separate videos with them? Well, I've decided, yeah, that won't take much effort. That's very little effort at all, actually. So I decided I will start pulling out segments that I think people might be interested in and making little shorter, more specific videos in the days that I do a topic I think people would actually like to see that might be stuck in the middle of the video. You know what I'm trying to say here. So from now on, I'm going to be doing a little segment. I don't know what I'll call it, like Yankee snippets or something. But if I think I've got something in the middle of a video or a segment of a video that people might like to see as a standalone video, I'll pull it out, make a short little video like the one I'm doing today, because one of the things people mentioned is the one I said, what I did where I said the 3 changes you need to make to a Beretta 92 for it to be a good carry gun. So I'm going to pull that out, make its own little standalone video today. This preamble won't be on all the others, so they'll be even shorter, but I just want to let people know that's what I'm going to be doing. You've asked me to do it, so I'm going to do it because it's very little work. So going to be doing that now, so keep your eyes open every day. I'll have my daily show, but I'll also, if there is a topic that I think people might want to see, I'll put a little snippet video out. And if you see a topic in one of my videos that you think should be pulled out and made into its own video, even if it's a past video, let me know. I'll do it with those too. And with that being said, let's get on to our first in this series. All right, with that being said, I want to move on to my favorite part of the show, the part of the show I usually do this for, and that is, of course, gun talk. And today I want to talk about Beretta 92, 96 firearms, whichever one you have. People know I love them. People know I carry them. People know they're my favorite semi-automatic guns, so they're often asking me, hey, what modifications do I need to do to a stock Beretta to make it the perfect Beretta, especially for carry? Well, there's a few things I always recommend people do. And it's not going to be a lot of the things some people would think. A lot of people would say, think I'd say, change the sights to better sights, or, change the safety to a safety decocker. Those things are preference, whether you want to do them or not. Do you want different grips? Do you want better grips, tackier grips, less tacky grips, whatever? Those are all preferences. Those are things you choose. But there are certain things to the gun I think everyone should do if they want the gun to operate optimally. Now, one of the first things I'll say is that there's really 3 changes, but there's actually 4, but I'm going to say there's 3. Because the first one, which I don't really count, is make sure your gun has a steel trigger. Depending on what model you have, you'll either have a steel trigger or a stainless steel trigger or a polymer and steel trigger. You don't want the polymer and steel trigger. I don't care about the polymer coated parts for other things, but the trigger needs to be all metal. So that's one thing you want to make sure your gun has before you do the other upgrades. And the reason for that is because one of the upgrades that I like requires the metal trigger. Now you can just get a stock metal trigger off eBay for like $5. Or you can get the Wilson Combat Short Reach trigger, which I do believe runs around $29. It's anywhere between $27 and $30. You can get that one if you want. I do recommend that one. But whatever trigger you get, make sure it's an all-metal trigger. And then you can move on to the 3 major changes you need to do to the gun. Now, the first one is the trigger spring. And that's why I want you to have a metal trigger. I recommend the Wilson Combat Replacement Trigger Spring. This is not just a little coiled spring like the one that comes in your gun. It's actually a little plunger and spring system that actually just replaces that little spring. But it makes for a much smoother trigger return, a much smoother trigger operation. It really is worth the upgrade. So that's the number one thing I say change. The number one thing on the list. These are all equal value. Or actually, they're not equal value. This one is probably not as equal value as some of the other things I'm going to mention. But it's number 1 on the list. You know what I mean. All right, now the second thing that I think is necessary to make your Beretta as good as it can be is to change the hammer spring. Now, traditionally, most models of Beretta came with a 20-pound hammer spring. Then the D-spring got really popular, which was a 16-pound hammer spring. And now a lot of guns come stock with the 16-pound hammer spring. But whether you have the 20 or the 16, I'm going to say change it. Now, what I say change it to is get yourself a Langdon tactical hammer spring, a 12-pound or 13-pound hammer spring. That will make all the difference in your gun. It will make the trigger so much better, especially when you pair it with that Wilson Combat trigger spring replacement. It makes the gun smoother, lighter, crisper, cleaner. It's just better overall. Now, the reason I say 12 or 13 pound, I say 12 pounds if you shoot all domestic ammo. You're not going to have a problem with light primer strikes with a 12-pound spring if you shoot all domestic ammo. If you shoot some foreign ammos, go to a 13-pound spring. Now, if you find yourself shooting really hard NATO primers, you're probably going to have to go up to a 14-pound spring. But even the 14-pound spring is going to make quite a bit of difference, but not as much difference as the 12-pound spring does. The 12-pound spring in the gun is awesome, but the only thing I do say is make sure you're shooting only domestic ammo if you go with the 12-pound spring. And if you do shoot just domestic ammo, you'll be glad you switched out to that spring. Or if you shoot foreign ammo, the 13, like I said, is almost as good, but a little more reliable with those foreign primers. All right, now the third and final thing I say to do, or fourth, depending on how you look at it, is something I tell people to do if you want your gun to be the absolute best it can possibly be for self-defense, range shooting, whatever, and that is to change the trigger bar. Berettas have that famous external trigger bar, so it's really easy to do. Get yourself a Langdon Tactical Optimized Performance trigger bar and replace the stock trigger bar you have. That makes a huge difference. It changes the reset of the gun to where it's just much cleaner, faster, shorter, etc. Doesn't change trigger weight at all, but it just changes how the trigger operates, how it resets, and it's really a big change, and it makes such a huge difference. Now, if you look at the price of these things, that hammer spring is going to usually run you about $8. A Wilson Combat trigger spring runs about $20, sometimes a little less. And the optimized trigger bar is going to be the biggest investment at about $65 to $70. So if you do all these changes, if you change everything on the gun, you're probably looking at, depending on where you get your parts, how you get your parts, what kind of trigger you go with, you're looking at anywhere between $100 and $130. I've done it for both price ranges, depending on where I got my parts, when I got my parts, if I got them used, new, whatever. But for about $130, you can have the best Beretta you could possibly have, period, out there. You could also go the extra mile if you wanted and get the Langdon Tactical Trigger Job in a bag. That's a really nice thing. Really makes your gun pretty much as good as it can be. But like I say, if you just do these 3 or sort of 4 things to your gun, like I say, and spend like $100, $130, you will have the best Beretta you can possibly have. And then you can work on things like sights, grips, whether you want it to be a G-type, etc. All those preference things, you can do that because that's just icing on the cake once you do those changes that make the Beretta the best it can be.